Hello, podcasters. How are we doing? Hope we are okay. Hope you are chilling wherever you are and everything is going on well. So, I would want to begin by thanking the Lord for this day and honoring Him because ideally, God first in everything. Today, we are beginning our very first episode, which is communication and why is your doctor so good at what he does. Communication can be just the exchange of information by either what I'm doing, speaking, writing, even sign language is also communication, and even using other media, social medias, internet, WhatsApp, Facebook, all that is all about communication. And there are four types of communication. If we try to categorize them, we have the verbal, the non-verbal, the visual, and the written. Ideally, the verbal is me speaking and articulating words. It can be in English, it can be in any foreign language that you use. The non-verbal, mostly sign languages, facial expression, all that God has given us, we can use it to communicate. The visual is ideally when you go to the medias that must portray information. They can do pictures, photography, we have animations, we have billboards, all that can convey communication. And the written, back in the days, people used to do a lot of letter writing. So you would write a letter to a friend, and that was communication. But right now we have a lot of WhatsApp. So I think texting can also be like writing. Yeah, somehow. Anyway, so that is all about communication. And going back to school life, we were able to encounter this in our curriculums, especially giving us a talk on how to be effective in our communication. And they would mostly dwell on the 7 C's. If guys you do remember, the clear, conscious, correct, complete, whatever it is. I don't have all of them on my head, but it was so vital that we needed to have it. And even though you did not have to be in a business world per se by then, it had to be told to us so that we could be able to relate with people wherever we would meet them, even when we do grow up, even when we do get these careers that we are dreading in right now. I stumbled on a paper that was written to the NH, that is the National Library of Medicine, which was titled Communication Skills in Medicine, Where Do We Come From and Where Are We Going? They briefly gave us a history of how communication, especially in the field of medicine, came evolving. In the days of 70s, they were the difficult times. People were mostly more on, let's polish my skills. How can I cut this guy? How can I give this guy these herbals and it gets better? It was not more of listening to the patient, it was more of what can I do for the patient? I don't need that extra talk from them. I don't need that extra gibberish from them. So it was hard times. We didn't have that in our curriculum. And then when we transitioned into the 80s, we see the first recommendations coming in, and we are supporting the education system to incorporate communication, especially teaching people on how to have effective communication skills. And as time went on in the 90s, it became a mandate. And mostly in our schools, there is a moment in time when you do something about communication. Most times it can be in entrepreneurship, other times it can be in English. At campus, I didn't even expect it, but when I went for the medical school, we had a short segment about effective communication, and they were literally blabbering the same things that we did in O-level and L-level. So it is more of a reminder that even when we do get out of here, these skills are much more needed. When I draw so much on that, why is your doctor good at what he does? It is basically because of the way they do communicate with you. And they are key factors that doctors really should have at hand to effectively communicate with a patient, communicate with fellow colleagues. One of them, they ought to be good listeners. A person who listens, a person who really will understand and give a good feedback, rather than being populated with what the world has given us. Sometimes you go to a clinical room, you can relate with me. You go to a hospital and you find the nurses are seriously on their phones, WhatsApping. The doctor does not care, and you're trying to tell them, I'm having a headache, but no one is responding, or they are listening, but actually they are not listening. They are hearing, but they are not listening. Nothing can be done to you, and it's really devastating. They ought to be empathetic. Empathy is I understand with you. I listen to your problem. I can put on your shoes, and I will work diligently to help you. Sympathy is I'll cry with you. Empathy is I understand what you're going through, and let me do what I can do. So in our communication as doctors, as health workers, we ought to be empathetic in our communication. Imagine a patient said at your reception, they are burning up with the temperatures of 39 and above, and the caretakers are telling you that this kid is burning, but you keep on just passing by. Imagine if it was your own child. Wouldn't you really work hard to see that you do something to help that kid? So we ought to be empathetic in our communication. Paying attention is very important, especially to us, both to verbal and non-verbal communication, as they are components of communication themselves. Seeing a person, looking at their facial expression tells a lot. So in our communication, we ought to get those signals from patients. We should really know. You can identify someone who is really depressed. You can understand someone who is really sad. So those key factors are very important, and are a reminder for the doctor to be able to communicate effectively with patients in their clinic setting. Dwelling on a story, at medical school, I remember joining, we had all these different subjects that we were doing over time. You had nursing, you had MCH, and name them all. And most of them, when you were writing the procedures that you ought to do, they would always begin with, okay, let's say I am going to wound dress a patient. So what would you do first? First, you would organize the trolley, organize whatever you're going to use, the swabs, make sure they are there. And then when you go to the patient, the first thing you do is introduce yourself, create rapport. And every time you would see, and I have a lot of notes, the thing kept on saying, create rapport. And I remember even when we were doing practicals, imagine they would present to us dummies, but then you had to create rapport. Now, written was create rapport. Now, in practical, you had to introduce yourself, talk to the dummy, tell the dummy, hello sir, how are you? So I'm going to take your blood pressure. So this is a cuff, I'm going to tie it around your hand. It was funny at that time, and it was like, we are playing around. But when we come to the field that we are working in, we ought not to forget those days. We ought to really live to those standards of creating rapport with our patients. When a patient comes in your clinical room, that extra time that you give them, listening to them, talking to them, understanding their background, understanding where they're coming from, creating a narrative between you and them where you have a common sharing in your conversation is very important. That is what makes your doctor very good. You can relate with me. There are times when you go to some hospitals and they are very receptive. The cashiers welcoming, the nurses are welcoming, the doctors are loving, they have the smiles, they are concerned, they are kind, and you would feel, okay, here I'll get better. Even before they even give you medicine, you're like, man, me, I'm better in this place, I feel okay. But then there are these places you go, they are all busy, moody faces, no one's laughing, people on their phones. When you enter the clinical room to talk with the doctor, first thing, he won't even ask you your name. He just says, yes, what's the problem? After you tell him the problem, gets a pen, gets a piece of paper, he writes for almost 5 minutes, and at the end of it all, he gives a pen and says, go to the lab. You go to the lab, you find the people there, they just put up your sleeves, they get injections, they pierce you. You are not involved in the in the process. So effective communication begins by us being empathetic. What would you want others to do for you? That you would want them to do for you, do it for others. So how can we improve our communication skills? How can we be better doctors? How can we be that person when a patient comes will be like, I need him to work on me. I feel secure in his hands. When I just see him, I'm okay. So first and foremost, we ought to be attentive. Being attentive is listen to the patient. See them as they come in. In medical school, they tell us before you make a diagnosis, there's what we call a spot diagnosis. By the mere fact I look at a person coming in to my consultation room, I should have a diagnosis. So being attentive, seeing the little things, the non-verbal communication first before you go to the verbal communication is very needed. Ask open questions. Imagine a doctor asking you, so you got a fever last night? Yes. Where was it? At the head. Do you have a back pain? Yes. Where's the leg? Yes. Literally, it's dry. But if you be creative in the way you approach it, hello, how are you? So tell me, how did the headache begin? So after the headache, did you get a fever? It makes the patient even to paint a picture for you how the disease progression came about. Be curious. Being curious means that when I'm talking with a patient, there are things that I may observe on them and I can ask. For example, if you're talking with a patient and you see maybe they were leaping, curiosity would ask me, by the way, why are you leaping? It is good as a medic to know because it will help me in managing them. Sometimes they will tell you that, hey, maybe I had an accident, sometimes back or something of that sort. So being curious of the little details and asking about them to get more information is not bad. It is really good and it improves on our communication. Summarize throughout. So when I'm talking with a patient and giving me all their symptoms and everything they're going through, the way that they would feel that I have understood what they have told me, I would summarize what they have said and I give it back to them, checking if I have really understood all the details, I've checked all the boxes of whatever they are suffering from. So it makes them feel like you are very attentive, you know what you are doing, and you're a good doctor. Involving friends and family. Sometimes asking the people around about the patient is very good. Interacting with them, it shows that we are social beings. We are relatable. So engaging with the family, especially about patients, sometimes the patient's unconscious or is very weak and lethargic and they cannot really talk well. So engaging with the family, friends, with the family itself, and talking to them, reassuring them where need be is very good communication from our ends. Using the right tone. Now, the right tone is very important. And now, imagine I'm conveying communication to you about sad news and I come laughing. It is not very receptive. But if I understand the situations we are in, I use the right tones. If it's a calming tone, it's okay. If it's an excitement tone, it's okay. So having the art in which you can regulate your tone and know when to use it, your vocal tone is very good in our communication with patients. Being aware of our patients' situations. Sometimes, and this was a bit of a problem, you really want to give the best and you're working with a patient and you want to make them feel comfortable, especially those who work in the private sector. You want to make them comfortable so that they come back tomorrow. But this a person has told you has a very nagging headache and you keep on asking, you keep on bringing in jokes, it's like you have ignored the patient and you're not understanding their situation at that time and you're just trying to, I would say, relieve your own anxieties per se, but understanding their situation is if a patient is stable enough, I will have that extra talk with them. If a patient is not very stable, I would be on my toes working to make them feel comfortable to get to the point where we shall share more and more and more. So When you feel very challenged, especially talking with some patients can be very hard, it's very good to ask for help. Ask for help from colleagues, from seniors on how to deal with them, on how to talk with them, so that we can have effective communication, we can have information being shared, which is accurate rather than through jealousy or through whatever would be happening in that situation at that time. Be aware of bias. So bias is sometimes in our communication, patient may convey things that are not right. So being aware of bias, especially now if a male physician is working on a female and the female seems not to be very comfortable with the male, they will tend to withhold some information. So being aware of that bias helps us to know how to communicate better. For example, if I'm going to do an examination on a female patient, I will need a female to be around to provide an extra comfort, that even when I would be asking some things that are very intimate, she would feel comfortable to speak about them rather than her feeling like I am hitting on her or I'm trying to vibe her per se. That's what they say. I can go on and on and on and on how we can better our communication as doctors, but always try to be active listeners, speak up when need be, keep records, and the very, very important thing that I would really commend everyone who is listening out there is share your notes with your patients. Share your notes with your patients. So if I've written and this is my work plan for the patient, I would really want them to know what I am doing and involve them in every step of the planning. So if I've asked them a series of questions and I would want them to go through a series of investigations and tests, I'll begin A, B, C, D. I've had this and this. You told me you had this and this is something that you had over some time. So from all this that you have said and the examinations I've done, I feel we should do this test A, test B, test C. So they feel really involved, and in that way we are able as physicians to be able to convey information. I stumbled on something that's very interesting. There's a journal from the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology titled The Effective Patient-Physician Communication, and this is one thing they said. Physicians' ability to effectively and compassionately communicate information is key to a successful patient-physician relationship. The current healthcare environment demands increasing clinical productivity and affords less time with a patient, which can impede effective patient-physician communication. The use of patient-centered interviewing, caring communication skills, and shared decision-making improves patient-physician communication. And electronic communication with established patients also can enhance the patient experience in selected situations. So this really acknowledges that right now what is happening, these are some of the challenges in the health sector, especially communication wise. We have to be productive, and yet we are cutting down on the time we spend with patients so that we can be able to work on as many as possible. So you end up not being effectively in your communication, and it acknowledges that that is what is happening right now. And yeah, that is the burden that we do have on the health sector. But then they try to mitigate it by saying having a patient-centered interviewing approach and caring communication skills with shared decision-making improves patient-physician communication. Even with the limited time that you do have, having in mind that I am interviewing a patient, it's all about a patient, not about me. Caring for them through the way I talk with them, being kind, and talking to them about my decision, sharing decision making can improve our communication. You can spend 5 minutes with a patient, but they are worth it. And the patient would feel that you have done everything rather than just keeping quiet and making them another case. And again, they also comment and said, to those who have been able to go on another step, that is a relationship-centered model, we can use electronics. That is the world that we are in. Technology is advancing. Electronic communication with established patients. Those are patients who you have created that relationship with, to also enhance on the patient experience. And this will help them in whatever situation they are in. So most times I would ask, if you feel compassionate enough, you really love what you do, and we ought to give the best, as the Bible says, work at it as though you are working unto the Lord. Sacrificing time, giving your best at your workplace, listening, being attentive is very paramount and will help us to become the best doctors. And that is why your doctor is good, because you can have all the knowledge, you can have all the skills, but most times without the good communication skills, you won't be able to deliver to the patients and to your fellow workers. So this is a call to action. Let's revive our ways on how we do things, look into our communication skills, and look into being the best doctor that someone would ever meet. Thank you. Follow along, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe and please like.